I'm really excited to be giving the first Let's Fix School Discipline webinar. My name is Sarah Mojla. I'm a former public high school teacher. I'm a new lawyer, and I'm currently the statewide education advocate in Public Council's Education Rights Project. As a quick general note, everyone except for me is muted, so if you would like to ask me a question, there is a way that you can raise your hand. You can see that on your screen, that you'll be able to raise your hand. You can also use the chat function, which I think would actually be the easiest. So all you need to do is type a question to me, and since it comes right to me, obviously while I'm giving the webinar I won't be able to answer right away, but I'll definitely get to questions at the end or as I see them and they become relevant. So as an overview, Public Counsel is a pro bono law firm based in Los Angeles with a satellite office up in Berkeley, focused on improving the lives and future opportunities of individuals and communities throughout California. I work in the Education Rights Project, and we focus on improving educational realities and opportunities of students, especially for low-income students, students of color, LGBTQ students, and students with disabilities. So today what we're going to go ahead and do is I will give you a background and overview of how we decided to create the toolkits, and also an overview of what they contain and the next steps, including future webinars, my contact information, and fixing school discipline through our various methods and strategies that we have. So why don't we get started? So we decided to create these toolkits because of concerns with school discipline that our community organization members brought up, and the increasingly worrisome statistics about school discipline that we were seeing, through DataQuest and in the news. So in 2009, the 2009-10 school year, there were 21,000 expelled students in California. And California school districts issued more than 767,000 suspensions. So that is not just the students, that includes the suspensions for, one student that was suspended multiple times. So these numbers exceed the national average. A Council of State Governments study revealed those numbers, and so we saw that was really troubling. And additionally, we also are seeing through the Office for Civil Rights, they had a data collection, and we saw there that students of color and students with disabilities are disproportionately impacted. For instance, Black students are 3 times more likely to be suspended than white students were. So their suspension rates are 18% versus a 6% rate for white students. Additionally, the research shows that actually suspensions and expulsions don't correlate with better student behavior or higher achievement scores or even improved school climate. So in fact, high rates of out-of-school suspension correlate with lower achievement scores. And a recent Texas study found that students who had been suspended or expelled were 6 times more likely to repeat a grade, 5 times more likely to drop out, and 3 times more likely to have contact with the juvenile justice system. And, when you're thinking about things like this, think about what happens when, when you're looking at the tools in the toolkits and thinking about suspension and expulsion rates, you want to think about what happens when a student is put out of school, how they become, how they fall far behind in their schoolwork, and then how that would create a situation where when they return to school, they're behind already and less likely and less motivated to continue. So all of this information led to these how we can fix school discipline toolkits led to the creation of them. So for right now, what we're going to do is take a poll. And I have now launched a poll that you can all see and take. And the question is, what kind of stakeholder are you? These toolkits were, and I see that a lot of you are answering already, which is exciting. So the idea is that these fixed school discipline toolkits work for all stakeholders, right? So students, parents, community members, school administrators, teachers, school board members, etc. So I'm going to give you a few more minutes, well, not a few more minutes, a few more seconds to get in your votes, and I will give you the results. All right, so it seems that about 52% of you are school administrators. There are a few students, and 34% are other. And I'm very interested in that 34% that are not parents or community members. So we will, if you're not, I would really love it if you could tell me about that at the end, if we can, when I open up for questions and everything. Okay, so as I was saying, these toolkits are relevant for statewide to all stakeholders at any stage in fixing school discipline. So how do we use them, right? How should we use these toolkits? So the first thing, before I get into all of the substantive tools, I want to go ahead and use this opportunity to take you to the fixschooldiscipline.org site. And on this site, so we have the print versions, the PDF versions of the toolkits, and you can download them on our site, the Fixed School Discipline site. So what you would do is go to this home page, you would go to Get the Toolkit, and from there, depending on the type of stakeholder you are, you will either go to the Community Toolkit or the Educators Toolkit. So I'm going to go into the Community Toolkit here, and I'll show you that you can download a PDF version right here, the PDF version of the Community Member Toolkit, and on the Educators page it's the same. And then you can also see the different fact sheets right here, the basics of fixing school discipline and why we need to fix this, the alternatives that will help us, and the different tools that you can use to create compelling stories and, advocate for changes, find allies, and, grow the network. And then also all of these real stories that are interviews with different educators and community members. So I wanted to also let you know that you can access this website on a phone or a computer or a tablet. It reads always, and each page can be printed straight from the website. And we'll revisit this version, the website version, a few more times. Sorry, one second. A few more times during this presentation. So the first thing that you should do, the first thing that we think makes sense when you're trying to fix school discipline is that you want to know the problem. And so there are countless tools in these toolkits that will help you understand what the problems are with school discipline in California, what they are in your specific communities, which students are affected by problems with school discipline, how these issues affect the communities surrounding schools that are struggling with school climate and student behavior, meaning, not just the students themselves, but their families, the businesses surrounding all of the community, and also what state and federal laws govern school discipline. So there are, in the print versions, and this is a screenshot from a print version of the toolkit, there are fact sheets that help you understand these issues surrounding school discipline, as well as tools that will help you guide your own and do your own data research. So a lot of, when you're advocating, it really helps when you also know what is going on in your community because you have actually seen the specific data. So here is a tool that will help you research data in whatever community you're in. So there is the DataQuest website, there's the Civil Rights Data Collection, and then the California Healthy Kids Survey and California Healthy Climate Survey. And this tool takes you step by step on how to access this data, how to compile it, how to understand what you're seeing. So the next thing that we're going to do is take another 2 polls, and I'm interested here in if the school in your community or schools that your students attend or schools in which you teach have alternative discipline practices or policies in place. And I'll give everyone about 30 seconds for that. All right. It seems that an overwhelming majority of you have some alternative discipline policy in place or practices in place in your schools. And so now I'm really interested in what alternative discipline approaches are you using or are you most familiar with? And I'll give everyone about 30 seconds for that. All right, so it looks like again, a lot of you know about positive behavior interventions and supports, but there are some people here who also have restorative practices or restorative justice happening in their school. That's great. So the next thing that these toolkits will do is that you can go through and you can read all these real life stories of improved school climate and student behavior. These stories from the educators are in question and answer form, so it's easy to glean information about what the educators and community members actually did. They include background about the schools, the demographics of the school, and we found this narrative, presenting in this narrative format, helpful because all of the educators and community members revealed their processes and their struggles and their steps to actually fixing school discipline. So, not everything that they embarked upon was exactly perfect. A lot of them had struggles. There were issues with, teachers at the school, students and parents. And so these interviews all contain, very helpful and important information about what happened in their their journey to fixing school discipline. And that journey obviously still continues. Additionally, these pages contain tools and documents that they actually used. So not, not just stock documents. So for instance, this is an interview with Principal Carrie Callahan from Pioneer High School. And she actually talked about how they utilized their 3-tiered intervention protocol. So this bolded and underlined tool will be downloaded straight from the site onto your computer, and you can see, the exact steps, that she took. So as you can see, or the exact tools that she used. So you can see on the screen, there's this Pioneer High School school intervention protocol. There's a flow chart about what really should happen in a classroom, when there's, problem behavior that the teacher would like to deal with. And then, a checklist of the actions that the teacher actually took. So this is a tool that they have, and it's helpful that, we find it helpful to include it so that other people can, create their own tools. So the overwhelming number, and actually all of our interviewees reported that they experienced significant reductions in their suspensions and expulsions, their office referrals, problem student behavior. They were experiencing more positive school climate. A lot of people said it was just calmer in their schools. They also achieved gains and improvements in their academic achievement, so API scores. Pioneer High School specifically reduced their suspensions by 65% and raised their overall API by 48 points in a school year after the implementation of PBIS, Positive Behavior Intervention and Support. Garfield High School in Los Angeles, also Pioneer High School is in Woodland in Northern California. Garfield High School in Los Angeles reduced suspensions from 683 the year before they implemented positive behavior intervention and support to 1 the year before last. The results from last year have not come in yet. So, but that, that's a really drastic reduction. Additionally, Rosa Parks Elementary in San Francisco reduced their suspensions from 40 suspensions to 5 after the implementation of restorative practices. And so, I include these examples to show that this can happen with, the different alternatives. So it can happen with positive behavior intervention and support as well as with restorative justice. And it happens in high schools, middle schools, and elementary schools. So, these alternatives are really actually proven and research-based, and they work. So this is a quote from a teacher who works, in fact, at Rosa Parks Elementary. And, it's helpful to see that she's saying, the climate in the school is much improved after the implementation of restorative practices. And she sees less students, a lot fewer frequent flyers. So less students who just were always getting into trouble, always being that kid in the office for, school administrators and, teachers. There's always that kid, right, that keeps coming back to the office. And she sees a lot fewer of those students. And she also feels that, she says, I think that the students feel like their voices are being heard, so they are less angry and less likely to act out. And it's not just, the story here with them. They've raised their API from 713 points in 2009 to 792 in 2011. And their suspensions are down to 5. So, it's helpful to see that from, a real life perspective. And in the future webinars, we're going to further unpack the framework of these alternatives and approaches, since a lot of, about 78% of you are well or familiar with positive behavior interventions and supports. It seems that it would be helpful to unpack, restorative practices or restorative justice, social emotional learning, and trauma-sensitive schools. So that is forthcoming. Additionally, there are tools in these toolkits that will show you about, or will explain different funding sources and reveal where, what sources schools are using to pay for their implementation, their training, all of those things. So there's this really great. We've compiled all of these funding sources that we received from, for instance, Principal Callahan, for instance, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. So there's federal IDEA money that comes to schools that they can use for training and development of PBIS and response to intervention programs. We've also included in this document so there are, federal funding sources, we have state funding sources, and we also have private funding sources. And we will, of course, continue to improve those funding documents, and I ask you to also send, if you know of a funding source that is not listed, you should definitely send it our way, and contact me, and I'll have contact information about those. Additionally, I want to make sure to point out that Pioneer High School, not only do they have different used funding, they were able to generate funding sources or apply for them and use them to implement positive behavior intervention and support. They also generated a savings for the district of $100,000 ADA dollars from increasing their attendance because they're decreasing suspension rates, which is something very interesting that I didn't know about before. I was a teacher and I only really thought about, there being more students, but not thinking that, oh, this will also help save money. It's great. And this is a picture of Principal Callahan. All right. So this is our last poll. And I want you to think about, so if you're in the stage where, think about the schools in your community, and think about statewide what you think is the biggest obstacle to implementing alternatives in school. And so the choices here are that you don't know enough about them, or don't know how. Training and implementation costs are prohibitive, meaning that that it's perceived that they will cost a lot of money to train, to hire more people, all of those things, and the will of peers, higher ups, and other stakeholders. And what I'm getting at in that question is that people know about them, but they don't, for a myriad of reasons, don't necessarily want to embark on an implementation of an alternative discipline policy. So I'll give you about 30 more seconds on that, because I see that people are still voting. All right. So it seems that the results are kind of spread across the board. About a quarter of you don't know enough about the alternatives, or don't know how to start implementation. And about a quarter of you also think that the training and implementation costs are prohibitive for starting. And then a lot of you, almost half, seem to think that or perceive that the will of peers and higher ups is a big obstacle to implementing alternatives. And so, I want to take this opportunity to say that these are things that we were hearing and that led to, that were part of our motivation for creating the toolkits. And there are tools in the toolkits that address some of these concerns, as well as different the contact information for different interviewees, different people that are in the toolkit, community members, teachers, school administrators, that will get to that. And also, I am available and public counsel is available to help with these endeavors. And for the 6% of you that are that say other, I want to say that I'm interested in hearing more about that when we get to questions. So finally, or not finally, next, in these toolkits, there are tools to help you apply your newfound improved knowledge about school discipline and help educate others. So again, even though, everyone is, at a different stage of their implementation or their fixing school discipline process, there are a lot of sample documents that can help you, get started, that can also help you if you, are in fact, very well versed in what's going on with school discipline and you're ready to get started. So for instance, for school administrators or for school board members, there are tools like a model alternative discipline plan or policy that incorporates the best elements from other policies that we found in California and across the country. So we have in the toolkit samples of those, summaries of those policies and plans, and then also have this model policy and plan. So it it includes the things that would be in a school district's discipline policy, alternative discipline policy or plan. So a statement of intent, superintendent responsibilities, school district leadership responsibilities, school principal responsibilities, teams, what the different school leadership teams will do, what teachers, parents, and students should do also under this policy. So it creates this tool can be, cut and pasted and put into a Word document for, say an administrator or a school board member to begin this process, if that's where you are. So I also have another for, community members who are interested in learning more about school discipline practices, and they've gone to DataQuest and seen the school accountability report card, and that's not enough. You can go ahead and fill out a Public Records Act request. And so we have a step-by-step guide on how to do that, as well as a sample that you can use, that you can cut and paste and fill in and use. And I think that I'm noticing here that a lot of you were not able to see my screen. So I'm sorry about that, and I'll go back and show you the slide, the slides that I was talking about. So this is, there are tools in the toolkit that help you advocate for change, and they on the Fix School Discipline website, you can see this model alternative discipline policy or, plan that includes a statement of intent and the responsibilities of different stakeholders, as well as different tools that can be cut and pasted and filled out for your use, such as the Public Records Act request. So I hope that more of you can see that now. So, we've basically provided the different inquiries that you would want to send to a superintendent of the district that you are interested in learning more about. And the print versions also include these tools. And if you see, you're going through the PDF versions of the toolkit and you see something such as this, something that a community member or a school board member can use to advocate to peers and other colleagues about what's going on in the community, you can go online to fixschooldiscipline.org to the toolkit and, download it. So this is just an example of a community, a personalized why we need to fix school discipline fact sheet that you can create. We also, in the toolkits, have different tools for monitoring progress. Once you get to the stage where you're proposing and passing an alternative discipline strategy to when you have begun implementation, and then there are also tools in there for publicizing your successes and calling for support, like press releases. So this one specifically, is this screenshot that I have here from the PDF versions, is a monitoring tool that you can use to create an accountability plan. So there are dates, timelines for completion, like developing training in schools. You want to start that at the beginning of the year versus starting school visits to see if there's evidence of alternatives being implemented. So that would be, that would happen near the end of the year. So finally, a lot of this project was about connecting people with experts and building a network of people interested in fixing school discipline. So we have the contact information for all of these different school and community members that are included in the toolkits. And so you can go through and you can contact them, their phone numbers, their email addresses, their preferred way of contact. Additionally, we have partners that with whom we frequently work, and their contact information is also available. And finally, my contact information is also available at the bottom of the website. And so these are all avenues through which you can, begin fixing school discipline, get more information, all of those things. And I want to, take this opportunity to just say that I think this is really the way, I think one of the biggest ways that we'll be able to, affect, really improve the educational opportunities of, students in California by improving their discipline practices, by sharing the discipline policies, by sharing best practices and growing and building the network of people who are using alternatives and know about alternatives. So there are also other ways that we are working to fix school discipline that you can also help us with. So there are legislative efforts to keep, students during this legislative cycle to keep students in school, learning, and on track to graduate. So the first, and so in the interest of time, I will do this relatively quickly so I can leave room for questions, but you can definitely ask questions about these. So the first bill is the Assembly Bill 420, authored by Assemblymember Dickinson, that would eliminate willful defiance as a grounds for suspension or expulsion for students in grades K through 8. And willful defiance is one of those grounds that is highly discretionary, which leads to a lot of inconsistent usage. So, for instance, the other day, I read a story in the Washington Post about a student who was suspended on a ground very similar to willful defiance in Maryland for eating his Pop-Tart pastry into the possible shape of a gun. You know, that's a relatively minor offense. So, you know, that could cause, you know, suspending that student causes a lot of very harmful educational outcomes. So instead of doing that, all of these different alternatives that are in these toolkits would, you know, deal with that problem behavior. If that's a problem, would deal with it in a different way and keep the student in school. So this bill would also, you know, try and make sure that before, you know, students in the upper grades were suspended for willful defiance, there would be other means of correction, such as, you know, a positive behavior intervention support plan, or there were other restorative approaches taken to before suspending the student. And finally, for the Senate Bill 744, authored by Senator Lara, addresses the involuntary transfers of students from comprehensive schools to community and county community day schools. So we've seen from, you know, again, from the stories and the concerns of our community partners that students would be, for instance, a student would be accused of an expellable action, but the district or county decided not to expel the student, but the school would still be able to involuntarily transfer, or, you know, transfer that student without that student wanting to be transferred, right? So instead of that happening, we'll close that loophole so that students who are transferred out are actually students who have actually committed this expellable action. This bill would also limit, you know, the circumstances in which students could be transferred to community day and county community schools, and create ways for, you know, the students sent to the schools to go back to their mainstream school, their comprehensive school. So these are, you know, different things that we are working on, and the ways that we can, you can help us is that you could write letters of support to the Assembly Education Committee Chair, Joan Buchanan, and the bill's author. So, you know, here is a very easy way of doing that. So we have a form on fixed school discipline as well. And next, this is our second to last slide, these are the upcoming webinar topics. So we will be talking about using data to guide new approaches to school discipline, mental health services and fixing school discipline, demystifying restorative justice and practices, and as I saw earlier, a lot of you are unfamiliar with that, or at least not as familiar as you are with positive behavior intervention and support. Additionally, we will be talking more about funding sources federal, state, and private funding sources, and creating action plans and monitoring mechanisms for implementing alternatives. And when I say implementing alternatives, this would also include starting to build support around even adopting and starting, to implement alternatives in your different schools. So as next steps, I urge all of you to visit schooldiscipline.org and add your contact information to our list so we can notify you about upcoming webinars, important developments, and other opportunities to fix school discipline. We do have a blog there as well, and you can weigh in. We post things a few times a week, and so you can weigh in on all of, on these different blog posts. You can also go to our Facebook. From this site, you can go to our Facebook page. That'll also keep you abreast of different developments. And you can contact me to share stories, strategies, and best practices for inclusion in the online versions of the toolkits. So they're kind of a living document that will continue, to be improved and added to. And so that concludes the overview of the toolkits. And I know I went a little quickly so that I could make sure to leave time for questions. And so if you can, now you can go ahead and use your chat function. So there's a chat bar on this GoToTraining toolbar, and you can go ahead and ask me any questions that you have, and I will read them out and answer them. Okay, I see that Jennifer, I believe, has her hand raised. And so actually what I'm thinking that might be helpful is that I've now turned on the chat function, so if you want to, you can chat with me. But no one will hear your question, but you can definitely chat with me if you would like. Okay, so Jenny, you would like me to re-show the slide for step 3. I can do that. Let's see. Okay. This one. Okay, so on this page, basically, I think this was where I had accidentally not let any of you see this slide. So anyway, this is the slide where I have it hyperlinked, and there are a lot of you talking or asking me questions about whether this PowerPoint will be available or that you missed the beginning of the webinar. So this PowerPoint and the webinar will be available. So the PowerPoint is helpful because it's hyperlinked. So these sample documents are hyperlinked. So you can, they'll take you straight to the website. But also the webinar is taped, so you can hear me and see all of these the different. It should also have recorded these my traveling to the different slides and to the website as well. Let's see, a couple of other questions coming up. There's a question about the impact of AB 1729. I, off the top of my head, do not know what that bill refers to, AB 1729. So if you would like to, if you could, email me about that later, or clarify, that would be great. Let's see. Yes. So to answer Paul's question, Nancy's question, and Sergio's questions, yes, this PowerPoint and this webinar will be available at the end. I will send it out to everyone in addition to evaluation tool. So Sarah asks, where can I get more information about restorative practices? So there are a lot of different places you can get more information. If you look in the contact pages, and let me go, hold on. I'm going to go to the contact pages and I'll show you how it's split up so that you can look, you can talk to different people. You can also contact me and I can send you more information. There are, so if you look here, it has the different, different school leaders and experts and in different parts of the, different parts of California. So it's split into Northern California, Central California, and Southern California. And then it also talks about, or it also provides the expertise and leadership role. So what the specific trainer or expert is versed in. So here's restorative justice. There are a lot of restorative justice, a lot of restorative practices people as well, school-wide positive behavior intervention and support, people who are well-versed in trauma-sensitive schools, people who are well-versed in social emotional learning. There are a lot of different tools there. Also, you can go, and I guess I should, let's see. I would like to show you that each of the fact sheets includes, there are fact sheets about specifically positive behavior intervention and support and restorative justice and all of the different alternatives. And you can go ahead and see the, for more information section. So as you can see here, I'm going to the restorative justice and practices fact sheet, and it gives you an overview of everything. And then there's all of this additional information, resources, and research. So these different websites that you can go to. And as always, you can always contact me for to point you in the right direction if you can't find something or you need more information. So let's see. Okay, so this is a good question from Jeff about how do we see this working in a continuation school setting, because the continuation school has a very transient population. And I'm really glad you asked that question because one of the schools that is highlighted in these toolkits is a continuation school. So I'm going to take you to the website, really quickly to show you that. That Ralph Bunche is a continuation high school in Oakland, and they are using restorative justice and lowering suspensions and improving school behavior and improving student behavior. And I was able to visit that school, and I've been to continuation schools before and alternative schools before, and this one is, I can from firsthand experience say this is one of the calmer schools I have been to, and in all schools. So it was rather calm. Students moving, during the bell, students were just moving, you know, to their classrooms in an orderly fashion. There wasn't a fight anywhere, and the students were, in classroom learning. So I know that there are transient populations, but and there are different struggles with continuation schools. However, these alternatives work for those too. We also have an example of a juvenile detention or camp, juvenile camp school, McAuliffe, Krista McAuliffe High School, Camp Challenger in Lancaster, California, outside of Los Angeles. They're using positive behavior intervention and support. And the school that I was talking about, Oakland Unified, is in Oakland Unified School District, and it's Ralph Bunche High School, and you can read about the different things that are happening at Ralph Bunche, and how they have reduced suspensions and improved school climate. Let's see. So someone asked about where on the website did I find a list of other schools working on this. I think you're referring to, well, I'm not 100% sure what that question is referring to, but I do have, there's a list of partners, but there's also in our, in the contact section, you can see the, in the contact pages, rather, you can see the different lists of schools. And in the toolkit, this section that I'm going through right now, reading real life stories of change, this section can also give you more information about different schools working on this, working on fixing school discipline. If I did not answer that question, please, if you could clarify for me, that would be great. Okay, and so, for the question about 1729, I think someone asked, hold on, let me go back in. What is the impact of 1729? So the impact of 1729 being other means of correction, thank you, Ruth, for reminding me. So the impact of that, that bill is that before, suspending or expelling a student, a school would need to embark on different other means of correction, and the ones that are named in the bill itself are positive behavior intervention and support and restorative practices. So the idea is that before putting a kid out of school, what you would do is you would try to either have some sort of behavior intervention plan or contract with the student. You would try to have a restorative conference to talk to the student. You would maybe even possibly, if it's warranted, you would use an in-school suspension room. So, where, obviously the student would be getting instruction, would still get instruction, but would also be receiving instruction on acceptable behavior. So that would be the impact of that bill. Someone asked to see the description of Lara's bill again, and that is here. I will leave that up as I address the other questions. So Paula asked, about the role of attorneys in this process. So there, obviously, we think that I'm a lawyer, and then we think that the role is that as a sort of, how do I put this? Not necessarily a last resort, but we would be the people that would help leverage all of these different alternatives, and advocate for community members and um, different clients in getting these different alternatives in their schools. So as I guess a better way to say it, a more succinct and articulate way of saying it, is that the role of attorneys would be to use the different strategies to advocate for improved educational opportunities for your clients, depending on their specific needs. And so being educated about all of the different things, all of the different um, all of the different alternatives and all of the different harms that can happen would be your role. So being abreast of all of that, and then also using those things to advocate. I think that was a very vague answer, or a broad answer rather. And so if you want me to further articulate that, let me know. So there are a lot of questions happening here. Let's see. Oh, so Carmen asked if we have an affiliate in Minnesota. We do not, but Carmen, if you would contact me, I can definitely. We may have partners. I'm like right now, off the top of my head, I can't think of them, but we may have partners nearby, and there are people who do nationwide work that we know of. So I can definitely give you that information. Please do contact me right after. Oh, Paula, I think, okay. Yes, so, right, there are definitely, so for attorneys, there are attorney resources available, in addition to just, fixing school discipline and working with school districts. If you are seeing, community members and, teachers and different school administrators are seeing issues, there are definitely ways to, there are attorney resources available, and we have attorney partners, or legal partners on fixed school discipline that you can contact. So I'm going to the site just so I can show that again, because it seems like that was what the question was. That's what the question was pointing at. So, for instance, there are attorney resources at Public Counsel. There are attorney resources at, the ACLU, the Advancement Project, places like that. So in order to find those, if, you need extra help leveraging all of this different information and all of these different tools, there are a list of people here. Paula, let me know if that answered the question. Terry, we don't handle students in adult education, but if you follow up with me, the in transition program, students that are older than 18 years old, I mean, some of those students are still, we're still required to, or at least a school district would still be required to serve them. So, if they're in the transition program, there's a possibility that that Public Counsel would be able to handle one of those situations, or our partners would. So, yeah, so that question was asking if we handle students in adult ed or in transition programs. So if you could contact me specifically I think I can answer that question a little bit better when I and send you information. And then someone asked if I know if the public school resources are free for restorative justice. The resources that I've showed here, some of them are, so for instance, training is available for cost, but then there are also other resources. So I think if you go to the San Francisco Unified School District site, and you also go to the Oakland Unified School District site or our site, you can find these the different restorative justice resources, and you can also contact those educators that are working with that. And then, of course, you can contact me, as I've said, to send you any further information if that doesn't help. Ariana, so Ariana asks, I can't speak to that question right now. She asked a question about the No Child Left Behind Act affecting minorities, specifically as it relates to disproportionate disciplinary action, and why I think this particular kind of policy was enacted. That is, I think there's a lot in that question, and I can't quite speak to that. I can say that exclusionary discipline does affect students of color and students with disabilities disproportionately. And some of those issues are that a lot of sometimes students with disabilities act out in ways that are related to that disability, and also there is a lot of the time a cultural disconnect between teachers and the students that they serve, and so that affects a lot of that is a big factor with exclusionary discipline. And when I say exclusionary, I mean suspension and expulsion. So that's what I can say, that we've seen issues, but I can't really speak to how specifically the No Child Left Behind Act plays into that situation. And I believe there was one more question about, right, CTA's position on AB 420. And I would have to say, since I'm not CTA, I can't really give you the position, that what their position is. I can definitely say that we are working with, we have proactively and actively been working with CTA, AXA, and CSBA on, on making sure, like finding out what the concerns are, right, of teachers, administrators, and school board members with, what their concerns are in relation to this bill, and trying to, make sure that we are able to keep, like in consideration of all of those issues, keep students in school learning. So, that obviously that's our goal, to make sure that they're, since it's been shown that there is I guess an inconsistency with the usage of willful defiance, and quite frankly, based on, the EdSource article about, or the EdSource report about administrators and, different educators being a little bit confused about when they're supposed to use willful defiance. Our goal, obviously, is to make sure to minimize any of that inconsistency and be very clear that willful defiance should, students should not be first and foremost put out for minor offenses that and they should definitely be identified, when a student's misbehaving, it should be identified for other services, and suspension and expulsion should be an absolute last resort. So that's what I can say, but I can't speak to CTA's position because I'm not CTA. Let's see. All right. So, and then I have a question from Graciela. What type of training do I recommend to support administrators in moving their staff into restorative justice types of discipline? So there are lots of different kinds, depending on where in California you are, that might limit what kinds of trainings that you are, or who you can look to for training. So I think that it would be, there are up here in Northern California, well, specifically in Oakland, there's, restorative justice for Oakland youth. But then there are also, there's a national organization, the International Institute on Restorative Practices. They have provided training, for instance, to San Francisco schools, and are able to provide other training to to different schools and in all through California. So we can, Graciela, I think it would be helpful if you could contact me and give me a little more information about where you are, and we can talk more about me getting you information to support the administration. And then, so I think that we have a few more minutes, and so it'd be really great if those of you who answered no, that the obstacle that you found in the obstacles that you found in implementation of alternatives, that the obstacle that you answered was no will from stakeholders or higher ups. It would be great if you could tell me what you think are the main, some of the what that looks like, I guess. So what are these main obstacles? What does no will look like practically in your schools? That would just, that would be interesting to find out. And I also invite people who were identified as other from the stakeholder question. So if you said you were other, not school administrator, not community member, not parent, not student, if you could tell me who you are and if you have any specific questions about how to use these toolkits, since you are a different different kind of stakeholder, that would be great. I would love to, know about that. Oh, great. Advocates. Yes. Okay. Right. So I think also when and maybe I can clarify this and this would be helpful, but when I talk about community members, I include advocates. So for instance, if you're a, you work at a community building organization, or you frequently work with, I guess, yeah, if you frequently work with people who are affected by, different school policies, or, students and parents, I would, include you there. For, I guess for attorneys and other people, other advocates, I would, yes, you would be other. And I want to say that I think these tools are, it's especially important in your work to know about, especially how different laws affect the specific issues that you're seeing. So, we have those tools. And I'm going to go to a list of the tools that we have here, and just keep this up for a little while so you can see, some of the different things that we have that you could definitely use. So, even these talking points for meetings, documents to bring to a meeting with a school administrator. That would be helpful for you to know, to think about the things that a school official would want to know before embarking on any decision about implementation. Um, you know, and let's see what else. There's one more thing I wanted to show you. So, and additionally, all of the fact sheets, like the, state and federal law require the use of alternatives. That's important to know, how that works. It's important to know what the picture of school discipline looks like in California, and then also to know about each of these different alternatives. And we didn't really talk about trauma-sensitive schools and racial bias, but we will talk about these more in the upcoming webinars. And so I did just, want to, also point these out, that these are also different fact sheets that will tell you about the other alternatives. And so I'm seeing, so a few of you, thank you for answering the questions about the specific problems with no will. And so I enjoyed getting this answer from Jeff, thank you, about we have staff unwilling to change. They're talented but comfortable. They like their problems gone for a day or two. And so, yeah, and that elder teachers don't like to change, and that you're new in your position and you can't yet, don't feel like you have the trust yet to, make those changes. So I would say, and I have experience in this, as I was a teacher in the New Orleans public school system, and I was also a new teacher, and I understand that there are a lot of elder teachers who are really comfortable in their comfortable in the practices that they already use, and when a student leaves the classroom, a quote unquote problem student leaves the classroom, it's nice. It's it's nice for them, or it feels like the problem is taken care of. But the issue is here that I think there are a lot of students who are suspended and resuspended and resuspended and resuspended, and I think that points to the issue that the problem isn't going away. The problem is gone for a day or two and returns even worse because the student is then even further behind and more disengaged because they are angry. So a lot of the time, upset about having to have gone home, or maybe it was even a fun vacation for them, and so they don't mind going on one again. And so I think a lot of the steps to combating that is to have an open conversation. Talk about why talk about the problems with suspending and how it opens students up to really permanent bad educational outcomes. That students may drop out, that they'll repeat grades, that students will end up in the juvenile justice system. There is research out there, and showing that research is really, is I think really key. And pointing to I think these toolkits are helpful because you can you can print off these documents and show, try and advocate and show your peers that these are real issues there, and if we really, we take our, oath as teachers or as principals or as school board members seriously, then what we really want to do is make sure that we are, make sure that we are educating our students by and make sure we're keeping them in school and giving them the services that they need to succeed in life and not continue to be a problem, because going to the juvenile justice system is still a problem, right? It's still our problem, right? So I know that we are at the end, and it is 1:30, and a lot of you, have to get back to lunch, and so I really want to thank, or get back to work. So I really want to thank all of you for coming. Someone asked about being notified of the next web training, and the next training will, I will email all of you that participated today, as well as, the group that, people who weren't able to participate and that registered. So you will be notified of the next training in advance. I'll give you a couple weeks notice, and then obviously, like today, do a day before and an hour before. And if you have any further questions, please do not hesitate to send me an email or give me a call. My number's on this last slide as well. So thank you, everyone, and I'm really excited that we'll be able to be doing these webinars. All right, have a good day.